Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome back to another episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast, where we explore the bold, the daring, and the extraordinary tactics that helped shape the outcome of the greatest conflict in modern history. I'm your host, Michael Wires, and as always, we're here to unravel the hidden stories behind the daring exploits of World War II. Between December 1944 and February 1945, a detachment of C Squadron 2 Special Air Service conducted a behind-the-lines mission in northern Italy, codenamed Operation Galia. Dropped into the Rossano Valley, east of La Spezia, Italy, their objectives were to disrupt German supply routes, support the Italian resistance, and divert Axis forces away from the Gothic Line, the main German defensive front in Italy. Operating in extreme winter conditions and in coordination with local partisans under Major Gordon Lett, the unit carried out a series of sabotage operations, ambushes, and reconnaissance missions. They faced limited resupply, mountainous terrain, political tensions among resistance groups, and continuous threats from German patrols, black shirt militias, and harsh weather. Despite these challenges, the mission succeeded in drawing significant Axis resources away from the front, contributing to the weakening of German positions in Italy ahead of the Allied spring offensive. This podcast documents Operation Galia in chronological detail, based on recorded events, field reports, and eyewitness accounts. But let's start at the beginning. On September 3, 1943, representatives of the Italian government and the Allied command meet near the village of Casabile in southeastern Sicily. The meeting takes place at a secured Allied encampment, shortly after the island has been captured in Operation Husky. Major General Walter Bedell Smith, Chief of Staff to General Eisenhower, signs the armistice on behalf of the Allies. Brigadier General Giuseppe Castellano signs for the Italian government. The armistice is approved by King Victor Emmanuel III and Marshal Pietro Badoglio, the new Italian Prime Minister, after the fall of Benito Mussolini. However, the signing is kept secret, to be revealed at a later date in coordination with military operations. The armistice is publicly announced 5 days later, on September 8, 1944. The timing coincides with Operation Avalanche, the Allied landings at Salerno on the mainland coast of southern Italy. The objective is strategic: to reduce the likelihood of resistance by Italian forces stationed along the coast and to support the successful establishment of an Allied beachhead. The announcement confirms Italy's withdrawal from the Axis alliance. The reaction is swift. German forces implement Operation Axe, a pre-planned response to Italy's defection. They move quickly to occupy key areas of the country, disarm Italian units, and take control of major cities and transport routes. The German High Command had anticipated Italy's shift. Following the fall of Sicily and Mussolini's arrest, preparations were made to reinforce German forces throughout Italy. Their objective: to prevent the Allies from gaining a foothold and to block any south to north advance that could threaten German territory. During this period, Many Allied prisoners of war escape captivity, aided by the confusion within Italian forces. Some make their way into the Apennine Mountains, where they are sheltered by local civilians or join emerging partisan groups. Among them is Major Gordon Lett of the British Army, alongside Sergeant Robert James Grierson Blackmore of the 2nd 15th Australian Infantry Battalion and Rifleman John McAuliffe of the Rifle Brigade. Lett travels through the hills of northern Italy. By the end of September 1943, they arrive in Rossano, in the commune of Zeri, in northern Tuscany. There they establish contact with the local De Lucci family, the first of many civilian allies. Soon after, resistance organizers from Genoa send 2 Italian army officers to meet with Lett. This meeting leads to the formation of an international partisan unit composed of Allied escapees and Italian volunteers. Meanwhile, the German regime takes steps to reinstate Mussolini. After his arrest, Mussolini is imprisoned at Hotel Campo Imperatore, located on Gran Sasso, the highest plateau of the Abruzzi Apennines. The site is accessible only by cable car, making a conventional rescue difficult. On September 12th, German forces launch Unternehmen Eiche. The operation involves a glider-borne assault carried out by Fallschirmjäger troops under Major Harold Moores. The assault succeeds without resistance. Mussolini is extracted by light aircraft. Although Moores is the operational commander, much of the public credit later goes to Otto Skorzeny, a German SS officer who participated in the raid as an observer. Mussolini is installed as the leader of the Italian Social Republic, a German-controlled puppet state headquartered in northern Italy. Backed by the fascist Brigata Nera, the Waffen-SS, and the Gestapo, the new regime enforces control through political repression and violence. This period marks the beginning of Jewish deportations from Italy to German concentration camps. Under Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, German forces construct a series of fortified defensive lines to slow the Allied advance. The most significant is the Gustav Line, which stretches across central Italy from coast to coast, south of Rome. A major strongpoint is the Abbey of Monte Cassino, positioned on high ground with commanding views of the Liri Valley. It becomes the site of multiple battles between Allied and Axis forces. Despite air superiority, the Allies encounter significant difficulties due to the mountainous terrain and harsh winter conditions in early 1944. German troops are well-positioned and experienced. During this time, widespread reprisals are carried out against Italian civilians suspected of aiding the resistance. One notable atrocity occurs in Pietranghieri, where German troops massacre dozens of civilians. Kesselring is later tried at Nuremberg, in part for his role in these actions. The Gustav Line is eventually broken in May 1944, following months of combat. Monte Cassino falls, and the Allies advance toward Rome. On the night of June 4th to 5th, 1944, Allied troops enter Rome, liberating the capital from German control. However, the timing coincides with the launch of Operation Overlord, the Normandy invasion, which begins the very next day on June 6, 1944. As a result, strategic and logistical priorities shift. Troops, supplies, and planning resources are redirected to the Western Front, slowing progress through northern Italy. On July 27, 1944, Major Gordon Lett is formally appointed British liaison officer and leader of the Blundell Violet mission, part of Special Force operations in Italy. His responsibilities include coordinating with local partisan groups, gathering intelligence, facilitating sabotage operations, and evacuating Allied escapees. As Allied forces continue their advance, many former prisoners of war pass through the Rossano Valley, guided across enemy lines with help from the Vermouth Mission, organized by A-Force, a British deception and intelligence unit. By mid-1944, Axis forces retreat to the Gothic Line, a new defensive barrier running across northern Italy, just south of La Spezia and the Magra Valley. The line includes two key components, a forward defense and a rear artillery line supported by ridgelines and elevated terrain. The Germans exploit Italy's natural geography to their advantage. As the Allies approach, German and Fascist units enforce strict control. Civilian reprisals increase. In the village of Vinca, near the Carrara Marble Mountains, another massacre is carried out in retaliation for partisan activity. On November 13, 1944, General Harold Alexander, commander of the Allied 15th Army Group, issues a broadcast over the Italia Combat Network. His message is directed to Italy's growing resistance movement. The message urges partisan groups to suspend large-scale operations until spring, conserve ammunition, and await further instructions from Allied command. While intended to minimize unnecessary losses and preserve partisan strength for future offensives, the broadcast has an unintended effect. Many partisans interpret it as abandonment. The announcement lowers morale and inadvertently encourages German and Italian fascist units to intensify attacks on resistance groups throughout the northern Apennines. Despite increased enemy pressure, Major Gordon Lett's partisan group remains operational and well supported. By December 1944, they maintain effective contact with Allied command and are deeply embedded in the local population of the Rossano Valley in northern Tuscany. Lett identifies the valley as a strategically ideal base, remote, mountainous, with a single-access road, and in close proximity to German supply lines moving through the region. This combination makes the area an ideal launch point for Allied special operations. By late 1944, the Allies' first major offensive against the Gothic Line has stalled. Although most of the line's central and eastern sectors have been breached, the Germans continue to hold the western sector, particularly near La Spezia. The U.S. Fifth Army's final push toward Bologna halts on October 28th, while the British Eighth Army continues operations along the Adriatic coast. At the same time, the U.S. is planning another offensive toward Bologna before the end of the year, but momentum is fading. Then, on December 16, 1944, a major event shifts the focus of the entire Allied command. In Belgium, German forces launch a surprise counter-offensive through the Ardennes forest. Known as the Battle of the Bulge, it catches the Allies off guard and nearly breaks their front lines. The impact of the attack is felt across Europe. In Italy, commanders worry that the Germans might attempt a similar counter-offensive against the Gothic Line, exploiting supply shortages, winter conditions, and stretched Allied manpower. Allied forward positions in Italy are under-equipped, low on food and ammunition, and increasingly manned by inexperienced or depleted units. As a precaution, High Command seeks to relieve pressure on the Gothic Line by launching behind-the-lines sabotage operations. To support frontline forces, Special Force Headquarters proposes the rapid deployment of C Squadron, 2 Special Air Service. Their mission will involve deep penetration behind enemy lines to disrupt communications, ambush convoys, and tie down German reinforcements. The mission is given the codename Operation Galia. Allied command agrees that Major Lett's territory in the Rossano Valley offers the best available drop zone. The Special Air Service team will link up with Lett's partisans for guidance and support. Locals will provide mules and donkeys to help carry equipment through the mountain terrain. Air resupply, however, is expected to be difficult and unreliable. By December 19, 1943, Special Air Service personnel arrive in Brindisi, a port city in southern Italy and a hub for Allied special operations. The objectives are confirmed: disrupt German reinforcements moving from La Spezia toward Bologna, interfere with withdrawal routes in case of an Allied breakthrough, and provide intelligence from behind enemy lines. The mission is led by Captain Bob Walker Brown, a former prisoner of war who escaped captivity and joined the Special Air Service. He brings experience and familiarity with enemy territory. The western flank of the Allied line is now held by the U.S. 92nd Infantry Division, a segregated unit composed largely of African-American troops. Newly deployed and still adjusting to combat conditions, concerns rise that the Germans may attempt a breakthrough along this section, potentially threatening the port of Livorno. On December 22, 1943, Special Force sends a coded message to Major Lett. Reply if ready to receive bodies. Repeat bodies on the 24th. Force standing by. Urgent. The phrasing refers to personnel, not casualties. Lett responds affirmatively, but requests a 3-day delay to ensure the valley is secure for the drop. He marks the designated drop zone with the letter H, alongside British and Italian flags, and waits. On December 26, 1943, just 1 day before the Special Air Service insertion, the Germans launch a short but sharp offensive. The operation is named Wintergewitter or Winter Storm. It targets the U.S. 92nd Infantry Division, testing its defenses with a surprise assault. Despite resistance, the Americans are pushed back in several areas, but within 2 days, the attack is halted. Though brief, the offensive confirms Allied fears. The Gothic Line remains vulnerable, and enemy counterattacks are still possible, even in winter. For the men of the Special Air Service, the situation is clear. Their mission, Operation Galia, is not just necessary, it's urgent. On December 27th, confusion reigns. A false report circulates claiming Major Gordon Lett has been killed. Contact with his partisan unit is temporarily lost. In reality, the situation results from miscommunication and the arrival of an Office of Strategic Services operational group composed of Italian Americans, which complicates coordination in the area. Despite this, Captain Robert Walker Brown, commander of the Special Air Service mission, and Major McIntosh decide to proceed. The drop zone, codenamed Huntsville, is located in a meadow above Chiesa, near the village of Rossano, in northern Tuscany. The airdrop involves 7 C-47 Dakotas, escorted by Allied fighter aircraft. It marks the largest daylight parachute drop to date in Italy. The operation is supported on the ground by local partisans who secure the landing zone and prepare ground signals. That afternoon, a reconnaissance plane flies over the Rossano Valley, dropping 6 parachutes with supplies, letters, including one from Major Lett's fiancée, and an award citation. Partisan Nello Sani is honored with the Italian Bronze Medal for distinguished service, the first such medal presented in the field. At 1700 hours, 6 Dakotas begin circling the valley. A single paratrooper descends from the lead aircraft, landing awkwardly but safely. He identifies himself as Captain Christopher Leng of Special Force. He is quickly joined by radio operator Ted Robinson and Lieutenant James Arthur Riccomini, making his first combat jump. A green signal flare is fired. Dozens more parachutes follow, including that of Captain Walker Brown, who lands without incident. However, the terrain proves less than ideal. Several men suffer minor injuries, including Privates Hilditch, Mulvey, and Shanley. All 33 men regroup under British and Italian flags. Helmets are exchanged for Special Air Service berets. Partisans move quickly to recover and store supplies. Over 300 parachutes are deployed. The aircraft circle one final time and depart, dipping their wings in salute. However, 25% of the supplies are reported stolen by local partisan elements, a setback for the mission's logistics. Major Lett welcomes the team. His address is direct and realistic. He assures them of a 48-hour window with low risk of enemy contact, though vigilance is critical. Local civilians will provide shelter and food, but amenities are limited. One of the DeLucci family has even prepared tea without sugar. That evening, the men settle in village homes and reconvene for a communal dinner in the nearby hamlet of Valle. Walker Brown voices full confidence in Major Lett, who has successfully unified various resistance groups and secured the cooperation of the local population. Despite ideological tensions, especially with Garibaldi brigades aligned with the Italian communist movement, Lett maintains control and coordination. The mission's objective is clear: disrupt enemy communications of the German 148th Infantry Division, forcing a redeployment away from the front. Key targets include the Via Aurelia, the coastal artery linking Genoa, La Spezia, and Sarzana, and inland supply routes from Aula toward Reggio Emilia and Modena. The Special Air Service detachment splits into 6 groups. Troop headquarters under Walker Brown with 7 men, 4 units of 5 men each, and 1 6-man unit. They are armed with Bren guns, Winchester carbines, sidearms, and a 3-inch mortar. 2 Vickers machine guns are scheduled for later delivery. On December 28, 1943, Lieutenant Gibbon is sent toward the Pontremoli-Aula Road, Lieutenant Shaughnessy to the area between Aula and Reggio, and Sergeant Rooks to the Pontremoli-Cisa Pass Road. Walker Brown remains in Rossano to conceal stores and coordinate with the resistance. Wireless communication fails due to mountainous terrain. On December 29, 1943, the headquarters, along with Lieutenant Riccomini's and Sergeant Wright's groups, moved to Pieve, equipped with a 3-inch mortar and 35 high-explosive rounds. While wireless contact remains out of reach, the team successfully establishes links with the Giustizia e Libertà Partisan Brigade. On December 30, 1943, a 6-man Special Air Service patrol is ambushed at Montebello di Mezzo. Their Italian guide is executed, but the Special Air Service soldiers survive as prisoners of war. They are later recovered after the war. The same day, a supply aircraft crashes, killing 7 Allied airmen, a loss that underscores the hazards of mountainous operations and winter flying. Elsewhere, Captain Walker Brown's team sets up an ambush along the road from La Spezia to Genoa. 3 German vehicles are destroyed, and a 4th is set ablaze. The enemy responds with heavy return fire, including from an armored vehicle armed with a 20mm cannon. 3 German soldiers are killed in the initial attack. A 4th dies later from wounds. Additional casualties are unconfirmed. On December 31, 1943, Walker Brown's unit withdraws to Siro to avoid further exposure. The move ensures operational security and allows the unit to regroup following the ambush. On the first day of 1944, Captain Robert Walker Brown launches a mortar assault on Borgetto di Varo, a small settlement along the La Spezia to Genoa road. The objectives are threefold: disrupt enemy troop and vehicle movement, announce the SAS presence to the enemy, and provoke a defensive reaction among Axis garrison troops along the corridor. From a distance of 1,000 meters, the SAS fire 34 high-explosive rounds using their 3-inch mortar. Several houses occupied by enemy troops are struck directly. As 2 German lorries approach the village, Special Air Service Bren gunners destroy both vehicles after advancing several hundred yards. A 14-man detachment of the Giustizia e Libertà Partisan Brigade joins the operation, attempting to block any enemy retreat south of Borgetto. However, they are unable to intercept the withdrawing troops. The German garrison abandons Borgetto, not returning for 24 hours. 1 vehicle is confirmed destroyed in the engagement. The following day, January 2, 1944, Walker Brown's unit returns to Rossano to resupply. Wireless transmission remains impossible due to the mountainous terrain. Lieutenant Gibbon also returns after observing no enemy activity along the Aula Pontremoli road. He receives orders to rejoin Sergeant Rooks. On January 3, 1944, Lieutenant James Arthur Riccomini moves toward Valeriano, where intercommunication is finally established and a resupply request is sent to base. However, disturbing news follows. Lieutenant Shaughnessy and his entire detachment are reported captured at Montebello by the Brigata Nera, a fascist paramilitary unit. Disguised in civilian clothing, the enemy unit surprises the patrol. The Italian guide is captured, tortured, and executed during an escape attempt. At Rossano, troop headquarters remains grounded. Messages from base report that supply aircraft cannot reach the Huntsville drop zone. The Special Air Service relays their concern. Huntsville is the only viable resupply point due to its centrality and the early warning network maintained by partisan watchers. On January 4, 1944, Lieutenant Riccomini lays mines on a river bridge near Valeriano. That evening, a German truck triggers the mine, resulting in 12 fatalities and 8 wounded, according to partisan intelligence. Meanwhile, Sergeant Wright prepares an ambush near Cerro, targeting the La Spezia-Genoa road. Back at Rossano, worsening weather delays all air operations. Snowfall deepens, and movement across the mountain tracks becomes hazardous. Ice blankets the ground, forcing men to move slowly and with extreme caution. On January 5, 1944, a wireless signal confirms that the Air Force will reroute the resupply to an alternative drop zone, codenamed Halifax. On January 6, 1944, Sergeant Wright's group successfully ambushes a staff car. A high-ranking fascist official is killed and 3 officers are wounded. Partisan reports claim the vehicle may have been transporting 125 million lire. Lieutenant Riccomini completes his operations and returns to Rossano. On January 7, 1944, SAS headquarters attempts to cancel the Halifax drop, citing the infeasibility of transporting supplies from Halifax to the dispersed detachments due to deep snow and impassable mountain tracks. Still, base insists. In response, Major Gordon Lett and Captain Walker Brown reassert that Huntsville is the only practical resupply point in current conditions. Nonetheless, the order stands. On January 8, 1944, poor weather and terrain continue to prevent communication. The SAS remains isolated, undersupplied, and dispersed across dangerous terrain. On January 9, 1944, the team gambles. Signals are placed at Drop Zone Huntsville in the hope that air crews might defy orders. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Riccomini moves to Halifax, joins Sergeant Wright, and prepares the site. At 15:30, an aircraft drops supplies successfully, but with serious complications. The drop is scattered across 10 square kilometers. Approximately 40% of supplies are stolen by elements of the Communist-aligned Justice and Liberty Brigade from Kyiv. SAS forces, outnumbered and focused on recovery, are unable to prevent looting. Captain Walker Brown and headquarters march 5 hours to Halifax that evening. On January 10, 1944, the day is spent recovering stolen equipment. The Special Air Service, short on personnel and operating in remote territory, struggled to reclaim critical stores. That evening, Captain Walker Brown's unit moves to Cerro with the intention of launching a night ambush on the Genoa-La Spezia road. However, the mountain tracks are now solid ice. Movement is loud and dangerous. The men slip, fall, and progress becomes impossible without detection. The operation is aborted. The unit spends the night in Cerro, cold, exhausted, and still undersupplied. On January 11, 1944, Captain Walker Brown leads a reconnaissance party to assess a road bridge at Lago. The team estimates that 136 kilograms of plastic high explosive would be required to destroy the target. Meanwhile, other Special Air Service elements prepare for action. A secondary team moves to a firing position near Borghetto di Varo, just 275 meters from a known German fascist headquarters. As they prepare to fire on two fascist soldiers playing tennis, a column of vehicles is heard approaching. Outnumbered and lightly equipped, the Special Air Service team holds fire and allows the convoy to pass into a prepared ambush site. The column includes a captured British staff car with 6 German soldiers, a 9-ton lorry and trailer carrying 27 German troops and 5 women, and a third vehicle that turns off before the ambush. The Special Air Service opens fire, discharging 32 Bren magazines and incendiary rounds. The staff car and the lorry are destroyed and set ablaze. 26 enemy personnel are confirmed killed. The next day, January 12, 1944, civilian reports confirm that black-shirt units retaliate by burning houses in Brugnato, a town near the ambush route. Captain Walker Brown's team responds. Armed with Bren guns and a 3-inch mortar, the Special Air Service moves to a mountainside overlooking Brugnato, the Brugnato-Borghetto Bridge, and Borghetto itself. The plan: launch a sustained attack on Borghetto to force the enemy to either reinforce the region or retaliate with a large-scale assault, disrupting Axis movements along the coastal road. A Thunderbolt aircraft dive bombs Borghetto but drops a dud. Special Air Service mortars fire 3 rounds into the retreating black-shirt column. An enemy platoon attempts to hold the bridge, deploying MG-42 machine guns, but is driven back into the hills. Special Air Service mortar fire continues intermittently. 1 round destroys a 20mm gun position in the Borghetto cemetery, killing the crew. Bren gunners, assisted by a breeder machine gun, flank the town, firing 57 magazines and setting a house ablaze. By 1600 hours, ammunition is nearly exhausted. Then a formation of 4 Thunderbolts appears. 2 bomb the Brugnato-Borghetto Bridge, while 2 strafe the road. The psychological effect on the enemy is immediate. In retaliation, the Germans fire 105mm artillery from La Spezia, but miss the Special Air Service position completely. No partisan units actively engage, though a few individuals fire Sten guns from long range. The Special Air Service withdraws in extended order. No casualties reported. On January 13, 1944, the Special Air Service returns to Drop Zone Halifax, where a B-25 bomber has delivered a Vickers medium machine gun without a parachute, damaging the weapon on impact. Bad weather grounds aircraft on January 14, 1944, but on January 15, 1944, 2 Vickers guns are successfully dropped. Due to a shortage of transport animals, only part of the equipment can be moved to Rossano. Corporal Johnson and 2 men remain behind to guard the rest. From January 16 to 17, 1944, the unit rests and conducts reconnaissance near the Pontremoli Aula Road. On January 18, 1944, Captain Walker Brown, joined by Major Gordon Lett, moves to Codolo to plan a Vickers attack on the German garrison at Vignola, estimated at 300 troops. The plan is abandoned when it becomes clear that the Codolo-Vignola route is being watched by enemy forces. Instead, the Special Air Service plans a 2-part ambush. First, south of Pontremoli, then a follow-up attack north of the town. The march to Arzilato is hindered by deep snow, poor visibility, and icy paths. The night attack is cancelled. The team rests. On January 19, 1944, the Special Air Service receives 20 partisans from Richetta's band, led by a respected fighter known as Nino. That evening, the group sets out. Using 2 Vickers guns on fixed lines, they ambush a section of road, flanked by a 15-meter drop and a steep embankment. A vehicle with headlights drives into a marching column, and both are hit by machine gun fire. Exact casualties are unknown, but local civilians report multiple enemy bodies left on the road. The enemy response is minimal, sporadic rifle fire, though it causes some of the partisans to scatter. At 00:30 on January 20th, 1944, the Special Air Service and remaining partisans withdraw. The Special Air Service heads to Nos, arriving at 6 a.m., where they learn that Corporal Johnson's mule team was fired upon. Most mule drivers desert, abandoning vital stores. Losses include all wireless equipment, rations, rucksacks, and sleeping bags. The team marches to Coloretta. At 7 a.m., a battalion-sized German force is spotted advancing in extended order, just 230 meters away. The Special Air Service escapes under mortar fire, again without casualties. During this time, Lieutenant Riccomini, suffering from infection, and others lag behind. 6 partisans are captured and executed, including Nino. 2 Special Air Service scouts, Privates Everett and Han, go missing for several days. Enemy forces from multiple towns, including Pontremoli, Bedonia, Varese, and Calais, now converge on the region. By 1700 hours, the Special Air Service reaches the village of Rio. 30 minutes later, the town is shelled by a 75mm gun. The unit relocates to the base of Monte Gotero for the night, sheltered, but now operating at reduced strength, with dwindling supplies and no wireless communication. At dawn on January 21st, 1944, the Special Air Service crosses the snowbound summit of Monte Gotero, 1,640 meters above sea level. Along the way, they link up with Lieutenant Gibbon, Corporal Ford, and several Italian partisans. The group continues to Monte Groppo, arriving at 2100 hours after a full day's march. By 2300 hours, urgent intelligence arrives. 400 German troops are just an hour away. In response, a large partisan force, some 1,200 fighters, quickly disperses. The Special Air Service shifts south to Boscetto. Partisans warn that German troops are closing in and that local civilians report German officers are actively searching for British parachutists. On January 22nd, 1944, at 7 a.m., the Special Air Service departs Boscetto. Lieutenant Gibbon's group splits off to return to Belfort. By 8 a.m., German forces, estimated at 2,000 strong, launch a coordinated assault on Boscetto and capture the partisan leader, Ricchetta. Meanwhile, the Special Air Service arrives in Buzzo at 1300, where they reunite with Sergeant Rooks and Corporal Lally. The team has now completed 59 continuous hours of marching with no food or sleep. They withdraw into the mountains for a 12-hour rest. From January 23rd to 24th, 1944, the Special Air Service remains in concealment as German troops occupy Buzzo. The team is joined by Lieutenant Leng, the British liaison officer. On January 25th, 1944, a false report spreads that 400 Mongol troops have arrived in Buzzo, likely referring to Soviet volunteers in German service. The report is incorrect, but the threat prompts the Special Air Service to relocate to the abandoned village of Nola. That night, Captain Walker Brown, Lieutenant Leng, and an Italian guide conduct a patrol into Buzzo. At a range of just 18 meters, they are suddenly fired upon by a Schmeisser submachine gun and an MG-42, which unleashes a full belt of ammunition. The patrol narrowly escapes. On January 26, 1944, the Special Air Service remains on full alert in Nola, maintaining defensive readiness. By January 27, 1944, the area is declared clear of enemy forces. The unit returns to Rossano, regrouping with all personnel except Lieutenant Gibbon and Corporal Ford. Other detachments report near escapes and combat. Lieutenant Riccomini and Private Sumter remain hidden near Tirano. Corporal Johnson, Major Gordon Lett, and several troops, including Privates Rose, Gargan, Hilditch, Everett, and Han, become surrounded in Sero by elements of the 285th Grenadier Regiment, recently moved from Genoa. After intense fighting, the group escapes. One Italian and one Russian partisan are killed, and another Italian is wounded. On January 28, 1944, Lieutenant Leng departs. The remaining Special Air Service troops dig up buried rations and ammunition while resting. A recovery party is sent to Arzalato to retrieve a B-set wireless hidden on January 20, 1944 by Corporal Johnson. Still, wireless transmission remains impossible. On January 29, 1944, with no comms and worsening weather, the Special Air Service remains static. At the same time, Squadron Commander Roy Farron at C Squadron headquarters authorizes Operation Break 2, a daring plan to send reinforcements overland through German lines. On January 30, 1944, a message is sent blindly and received. A resupply drop is requested for Drop Zone Huntsville, now the only safe location remaining. Halifax is occupied by German patrols, and Brighton is under observation. Signals are laid at Huntsville in anticipation of the drop. On the final day of January, signals are also set up at Drop Zone Brighton, but worsening weather prevents any flights from reaching the team. The Special Air Service remains in Rossano, exhausted, undermanned, and undersupplied, yet still operational, still hidden, and still a threat. On February 1, 1944, a runner arrives from Lieutenant Gibbon. He is sent back with written orders: regroup at Borseda immediately. On February 2, 1944, a Dakota aircraft appears above Drop Zone Huntsville, circling for 90 minutes in heavy cloud and mist. Emergency signals are activated. Against the odds, the pilot identifies the drop zone and performs 2 successful runs. Then, from just 110 meters, Captain Milne of the Royal Army Medical Corps parachutes in, his chute opening just in time. He lands safely in the snow. The following day, February 3, 1944, Captain Milne assesses Private Rose, who is unable to move. Rose is advised to remain hidden and attempt to cross the lines later if his condition improves. On February 4, 1944, the Special Air Service prepares to move to Borseda. The next day, number 1 troop, minus Gibbon and Ford, relocates. Major Lett and Lieutenant Leng remain in Rossano. That same night, Sergeant Rooks and his Vickers team attempt to attack the Aula La Spezia road, but without moonlight or cloud cover, the mission is postponed. On February 6, 1944, Special Air Service teams conduct a reconnaissance near Padivama and identify a potential ambush site. Plans for a mortar attack begin to take shape. On February 7, 1944, the Special Air Service makes contact with Bucchione, a partisan leader commanding 150 fighters. His group is well organized and experienced in raids on La Spezia. He pledges full cooperation. The next night, the Special Air Service strikes. Sergeant Rooks' team destroys 8 vehicles in a German convoy. Captain Walker Brown's unit hits the Genoa-La Spezia road, destroying 2 trucks and damaging another. The attacks kill and wound an unknown number of German troops. In retaliation, German forces burn homes in Stadtano and Manzil. Later that day, Bucchione advises against the planned mortar attack on Padivama, explaining that German troops have begun living among civilians to deter air and artillery attacks. Lieutenant Gibbon and Corporal Ford rejoin the unit. On February 9, 1944, poor weather prevents an airdrop at Borseda. The next day, a B-25 bomber delivers supplies at Drop Zone Halifax, but the Giustizia e Libertà communist partisans open fire near the drop zone. They attempt to loot the supplies. In response, Private Gargan fires 2 pistol shots in the air as a warning. The partisans retreat, then open fire. The Special Air Service fires 2 Bren magazines overhead, then a third directly into their ranks as they flee. No casualties are confirmed, but relations are severed. Captain Walker Brown receives orders to withdraw. The men are exhausted. The unit splits. Captain Walker Brown leads headquarters, Lieutenant Gibbon, Sergeant Rooks, and international volunteers. Lieutenant Riccomini leads the second group, including Sergeant Wright, a French fighter, and 2 Poles. On February 11, 1944, the newly authorized Break 2 unit arrives in Rossano as the original Special Air Service detachment begins withdrawal. Walker Brown's group crosses the Magra River and the Aula La Spezia Road undetected. With rations limited, 1 tin of bully beef per man for 2 days, they avoid action to preserve strength. On February 12, 1944, the team reaches Vichet and secures guides. The next day, they march to Vinca, abandoning heavy weapons due to exhaustion. Bren guns are left with partisans. On February 14, 1944, they leave Forno and begin their final climb over Monte Altissimo, a 610-meter ascent over ice and rock. They carry only carbines and 300 reserve ammo. They are joined by a group of downed American pilots. At 2300 hours, nearing the summit, they spot an enemy patrol. The Special Air Service take positions, but the Germans retreat. At 3 a.m. on February 15, 1944, a white phosphorus trip flare ignites. The team braces for fire. None comes. By 4 a.m., they reach forward American lines at Seravezza. On February 20th, Lieutenant Riccomini's group reaches Allied lines. Operation Galia officially ends on April 24, 1945, having achieved its strategic objectives. The mission disrupts German lines of communication, diverts thousands of enemy troops from the Gothic Line, and demonstrates the effectiveness of small, mobile units operating in coordination with local resistance. Despite limited resources, harsh terrain, and near-constant pursuit, the men of C Squadron, 2nd Special Air Service, remain operational throughout their deployment. 6 men are captured. 1 is left behind due to illness. All others return safely. Captain Robert Walker Brown is awarded the Distinguished Service Order for his leadership. By April 1945, Allied forces break through into the Po Valley, leading to the collapse of German resistance in northern Italy and concluding the Allied Italian campaign. This also concludes this episode of our podcast about Operation Galia. These stories remind us that the fate of entire campaigns often rested on the shoulders of small elite units, those who led from the front, striking hard and holding fast in the face of overwhelming odds. Thank you for listening to the Special Forces in World War II podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Your support helps us continue to bring you more stories of courage, daring, and the unsung heroes of World War II. Be sure to tune in next time as we dive into yet another remarkable operation that helped shape the outcome of the war. Until then, keep your wits sharp, your courage steady, and remember, sometimes the most incredible victories come from the unlikeliest of places. See you in the next episode. I'm your host, Michael Wires, signing off. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.